Story 1. The Caller Who Knew My Name. I worked the closing shift at a small gas station on the edge of town. It was the kind of place where the lights were too bright inside and too weak outside. Past the pumps, there was nothing but a two-lane road, a line of trees, and a ditch that collected fog after midnight. Most nights, I had the same routine. Lock the side door, count the register, refill the coffee. Pretend I was not nervous every time the automatic doors slid open after 1 in the morning. One Thursday night, the phone rang at 1:12. That was strange by itself. Nobody called the station that late unless they were asking if we were open. And the number was printed on a sign big enough to see from the highway. I picked up and said, "Gas and go, how can I help you?" There was static on the line. Then a man said, "You should not be there alone, Daniel." "My name is Daniel." I looked toward the front windows. The parking lot was empty. No cars at the pumps, no headlights on the road. I asked who was calling. He ignored me. He said, "The back door is unlocked." I knew it was not. I had locked it 20 minutes earlier. Still, I took the tire iron from under the counter and walked to the back hallway. The door was locked. I almost laughed at myself. Then the phone rang again. When I picked it up, the same man whispered, "I did not say it was open yet." That was when the handle on the back door began to turn. Slowly. Not like someone trying to force it, like someone testing it with patience. I could see the handle from where I stood behind the counter. It moved down, stopped, came back up, then moved down again. I called the police with my cell phone and kept the store phone pressed to my other ear. The man on the line breathed softly. Then he said, "Do not look at the camera." Of course, I looked. Above the back door, the security monitor showed the narrow service alley behind the station. At first, I saw only a dumpster and the wall. Then a face rose slowly into view. Not from the side of the frame, from the bottom. Like someone had been crouching directly underneath the camera, waiting for me to check. He was smiling. The police arrived 6 minutes later. They found no one in the alley, no footprints, no car, no explanation for how someone knew my name. The officer told me it was probably a prank. But before he left, he checked the back door one more time. There was a fresh strip of duct tape folded over the latch. Someone had been trying to keep it from locking. I quit the next morning. A week later, my manager called and asked if I still had the spare key. I told him I had turned it in. He said the station phone had just called his cell. When he answered, somebody whispered my name. Story 2. The Laundry Room. My first apartment had a laundry room in the basement. It was not a nice basement. The walls were painted cinder block, the floor always felt damp, and the light over the machines flickered if the dryer on the left was running. Still, rent was cheap, and I was 22. For the first few months, nothing happened. Then I noticed the notebook. It was sitting on top of the change machine, the kind of spiral notebook a kid would use for school. On the front, someone had written "laundry schedule" in black marker. Inside were names, apartment numbers, and time slots. That was weird, because our building did not have a laundry schedule. I flipped through it anyway. Most of the handwriting was normal. Apartment 2A, Monday, 6 p.m. Apartment 3C, Tuesday, 8 p.m. Then I saw my name, not my apartment number, my full name. And beside it, in a different handwriting, someone had written, "Friday, 11:30 p.m., do not interrupt." I took the notebook upstairs and called the landlord. He said he had never seen it before, but he sounded annoyed more than concerned. He told me to throw it away. I did. That Friday, I stayed in my apartment. At 11:27 p.m., the washing machine pipe started knocking in the wall. At 11:30 exactly, the basement door opened. I could hear it from my kitchen. The hinges made a long, scraping sound. Then, footsteps went down. One person. Slow, heavy, careful. I told myself it was a neighbor. Then my phone buzzed. It was an unknown number. The message said, "You missed your time." I did not sleep that night. The next morning, I went downstairs with my landlord. The notebook was back on the change machine. This time, every page was blank except the last one. My name was written there again. Under it were the words, "Rescheduled." The landlord changed the basement lock that afternoon. 2 nights later, someone slid a wet piece of paper under my apartment door. It was a page from the notebook. At the top, in careful handwriting, it said, "Apartment 1B, Sunday, 2:15 a.m." That was my apartment. I moved out before Sunday. 3 months later, I ran into a woman who still lived in the building. She asked me why I left so suddenly. I told her about the notebook. She went pale. Then she said, "There is no basement laundry room." According to her, the basement had been sealed for years after a pipe burst. I still have no explanation for that. But sometimes, when I pass old apartment buildings at night, I look for basement windows, and I wonder how many of them have lights on where no room is supposed to be. Story 3. The Passenger at Mile Marker 82. My uncle drove overnight deliveries for a medical supply company. He was a quiet man, not the type to tell stories, not the type to believe in much beyond what he could see, fix, or carry. But there was one stretch of highway he refused to drive after 2 a.m. Mile Marker 82. He told me the story once, after I noticed he had taken a 40-minute detour for no reason. Years earlier, he was driving a white delivery van through heavy rain. It was a rural highway, no streetlights, no houses, just black road and trees pressing close on both sides. At 2:08 a.m., he saw a woman standing on the shoulder. She was wearing a pale coat and holding one hand up like she needed help. My uncle slowed down. He was not stupid. He did not pick up strangers, but he thought maybe there had been an accident. When he pulled onto the shoulder, the woman walked to the passenger window. She did not knock. She leaned close to the glass and mouthed 2 words, "Not me." Then she looked behind the van. My uncle checked the mirror. There was a man standing in the road. He was directly behind the van, blocking the lane, wearing dark clothes and looking down at the pavement. My uncle locked the doors. The woman at the window shook her head, faster and faster, then stepped backward into the rain. The man behind the van raised his head. His face was wrong. My uncle never described it better than that. He just said it was wrong in a way that made his body understand before his mind did. He floored the gas. The van lurched forward, swerved around the man, and fishtailed back onto the highway. For a few seconds, he thought he was safe. Then something knocked from inside the cargo area. 3 times. Hard. He kept driving. The knocking came again. Then a woman's voice, muffled behind the metal partition, whispered, "Not me." My uncle drove straight to a police station. 2 officers opened the back of the van. It was empty. Nothing but sealed boxes, a hand truck, and muddy water pooled near the rear doors. The outside handles were locked. The seals on the cargo doors were unbroken. But on the inside of the rear door, someone had drawn a number in the condensation, 82. My uncle quit that route the next week. He never drove that stretch again. Years later, after he passed away, I found one of his old road maps folded in a box. Every delivery route was marked in pen, except one section of highway. Mile marker 82 had been circled over and over until the paper almost tore. Beside it, in my uncle's handwriting, were 4 words. "She was warning me."